Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be going through chapters, starting with chapter 24 in Leviticus, finishing Leviticus, starting in Numbers, and finishing in Numbers chapter 3. So uh, I'm excited today to share with you guys. There's just a lot revealed here in this area of text, and really referencing back to yesterday when we talked about the book of Leviticus and really meditating upon it, getting grounded in it, and how that really gives us a framework for understanding the New Testament. And in light of that, the one thing we can look at is Acts. We can look at the book of Acts, which is a book in the New Testament. And what we see there is in Acts chapter 2, verses 42, it says, "And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine." Well, the apostles' doctrine, that's the Old Testament. So that's what they're referring to. And what's exciting about this is in Acts, that's really where we are. We're in the time of the church. We're in the time of grace. Grace being right now, currently, that's how God is administering Himself. So with that, just looking at those guys and recognizing we're really in the same arena, it's showing that the Old Testament is really profitable. And in 2 Timothy, or I believe it's 2 Timothy or 1 Timothy 3:16, it tells us that all Scripture is profitable. So again, looking at this Scripture, really basking in it, and recognizing that the early church was in it. We should be in it, and it really is profitable. So, with that said, also as I went over Hebrews yesterday, talking about Christ and looking at how much of the book of Hebrews in the New Testament was how much of it really comes alive, and how a lot of those scriptures really mean something when we look at it in the context of Leviticus. And it got me thinking about Christ. It got me thinking about a lot of the things that we're reading here, which is there's a lot of prophecy here as well. It's pointing to things to come. So here in the Old Testament, pointing to things to come in the Old Testament, even pointing to things to come in the New Testament throughout all these ages. And I thought about Christ and Jesus, and so there were 60 major prophecies that He fulfilled, right? And there's a question that can be asked of what are the odds of any one man fulfilling even just eight of the 60 major prophecies that Jesus Christ fulfilled. And the number was staggering. It's 1 in 10 to the 17th power. So basically that's 1 in, write 100, and then after that 100, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, add 15 more zeros. Those are the odds. And one person put it, kind of so we could get our heads around it, put it in this context. Take the whole state of Texas, and if you took the whole state of Texas and you had a silver dollars, okay, now take the whole state of Texas and across the entire land area of Texas, stack silver dollars 2 feet high, 2 feet deep. So now the whole surface area of the state of Texas is covered with silver dollars 2 feet deep. And just take a gander, take a walk, and you pick one silver dollar. And if you pick just one silver dollar, that's the odds of let's say we just colored one of those silver dollars purple. The odds of finding that one purple silver dollar are the odds of Christ fulfilling just 8 of these 60 prophecies. So, wanted to share that with you. Thought that was pretty cool. Okay, when we pick up in chapter 24 of Leviticus, we're finishing still with just still some instructions and the care of the beginning here, the care of the tabernacle, and we see in verse 3, or actually verse 4, talking about Aaron and this continual lighting of the oil lamp. And it says, "He shall be in charge of the lamps on the pure gold lampstand before the Lord continually." This is to be a continuous thing. The bread of the tabernacle, just, how many breads, how to set out the breads. Then the penalty for blasphemy. And here the penalty, here what we see in this blasphemy area, this is really getting towards an eye for an eye. And so we find here a man who was the son of an Israelite and an Egyptian. And the point being is that whatever law is broken, whatever is broken, it's this eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And at first we think of that, in our Western mindset, we think of that, man, how brutal that is. But if we look back during this time period and all the stuff that was going on, it's if you really think about it, it's a really solid form of retribution, because it crosses all class lines, it crosses everything, and it points out that no matter who you are, um, this is how it's going to go, and it's a very straightforward form of justice. Um, so we see in verse 19, fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. And then also in verse 22, kind of what I was saying here, with it crossing all classes, all, whether you're poor or rich, Israelite, foreign, not. It says, you shall, verse 22, you shall have the same law for the stranger and for one from your own country, for I am the Lord your God. Okay, and then in chapter 25, let's see, chapter 25, it talks about the Sabbath of the seventh year. And this is really cool because this is pointing to some things that we'll see later. I know for sure in the book of Ezra and probably in other books. But there's this command given. And again, just looking here, how God is administering, how God is, every detail is accounted for. Every detail. And one of the things he's laying out here in the Sabbath in the seventh year is basically every seventh year, just let the ground lay fallow. And that speaks to a lot. One, just in terms of agriculture, just allowing the land to replenish. And he even dictates how, okay, in that time period of this land replenishing, don't worry. Why? Because he says he will provide. In the sixth year, before that seventh year, says here as well that he will give three times the yield to prepare for that seventh year. And in that seventh year, to just basically let it lay fallow. But there's also another thing that it speaks to. It speaks to greed. It speaks to, we're constantly, if we're, well, let me say it this way. If we're have all this yield and harvest in the 6 years and things are going good, why not do it in the seventh year too, right? And this points to, if we follow God's ways, if the children of Israel were to actually listen, what would that be like? And we'll see this in chapter 26. What God tells them in terms of the blessings that He'll give if they'll listen, if they'll follow His commands. Also, it talks about the year of Jubilee. So in this 50th year, things are forgiven, debts are forgiven, lands are given back, and again, this structure of God being administered, so that there wouldn't be this accumulation of really this big unequal accumulation of wealth. So this year of Jubilee, I don't know what it is about this chapter, and even the chapter 26, but it's just really exciting. I think about how awesome it would be if we had something like that even today, and we can, is as we're dealing with people on a basis of lending money, or someone being in debt to us. We can nip it in the bud in the beginning, and if we're going to give or loan, maybe just decide to give it to them, or not at all. Just really make that decision on the front end. And maybe you find someone that's in debt to you currently, or whatever it may be. Maybe you can have your own month of Jubilee, just releasing people of their debts to you, whatever that may be. So just a thought. Okay, so 25. Also what we see here is with the land laying fallow, with this year of Jubilee, what you see repeated is, but you shall fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. So we really get this sense of, as God is administering, He's really pointing out, look, guys, it's mine anyway. And we see that in Psalms. He says He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So if it's the Lord's anyway, and we're just here as stewards, and we're managing and being good stewards of what God is blessing us with and giving, then why not? Why not listen to His commands? Because it's His anyway. There's a law concerning slavery in this chapter as well. and how this breaks out in terms of the year of Jubilee, giving people back their freedom if they're a brother or a fellow Israelite. And then in chapter 26, there's the promise of blessing, and there's also the promise of retribution. And here what we're seeing is God saying, "This is how I'll bless you. If you listen to my commands, this is how I'll bless you." But He's also showing retribution. If you don't do it, this is what will happen as well. Um, and uh, and there's twice as much. There's twice as many verses spent here on retribution than blessing. And so why not just fulfill the blessing, or excuse me, fulfill the commands to receive the blessing? And I kind of alluded to this a moment ago with the land being laid fallow every seventh year. And there was mention back then, and also it mentions here in chapter 26, uh, in terms of the retribution. If you don't do that, then the land shall enjoy its Sabbath as long as it lies desolate, and you are in your enemy's land, and the land shall rest and enjoy its Sabbath. That was verse 34 that I read of 26. So if you don't do this, if you don't let the land lay fallow, then guess what? You're going to be taken away from it, and you're going to be taken away from it so the land can actually lay fallow. And we're going to see that later on as the children of Israel are taken captive in Babylon. And throughout this again, for I am the Lord your God, I am the Lord. In the blessings, give you rain, threshing shall last, vintage shall last. You shall eat your bread to the full. I'll give peace. I will rid the land of evil beasts. I'll chase your enemies. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, that you should not be their slaves. I have broken the bands of your yoke and made you walk upright. That was verse 13 of chapter 26. Going through. But then right in verse 14, but if you do not obey me and do not observe all these commandments, verse 14, and if you despise my statutes, or if your soul abhors my judgments, so that you do not perform all my commandments, but break my covenant, I also will do this to you. And then he just lays it out. He lays out what will happen if the commands aren't followed. So everything basically that we saw in blessings, we're seeing just the opposite here. And again, in verse 43, we see the land being laid desolate again, to be able to enjoy the Sabbaths. And we're going to see that they don't follow his commands later on, and that this is really a bit of prophecy, because it's going to be fulfilled exactly what he says here. And then he ends with, I am the Lord. These are the statutes and judgments and laws which the Lord made between himself and the children of Israel on Mount Sinai by the hand of Moses. And then in chapter 27, redeeming persons and property dedicated to God. This is really kind of neat, because what we're seeing play out here, again in this context of administration, are these vows and tithes. And if a person wanted to vow, themselves or animals or houses, just giving a structure for that and how that would play out. With clean animals, if a clean animal is given, then you can never get that back. That is completely the Lord's. But with unclean animals or houses, or even a man or a woman, a male, female, child, just giving a monetary value to that, and then also if it's given to the people, if it's given through the priest, then a person can redeem that back. But we see a 1/5, so 20% that they have to add to that, whatever that value was that was placed by the priest. So if it were, say, $10 in value for a lamb, well, then I'm going to have to pay $12 if I want that back. That would be a clean animal, though, so I don't think we would get that one back. That would be to the Lord. But again, just how awesome it is that all this is spelled out, right? That there's no gray area. And then we transition into Numbers. And with Numbers, it's really a census, which comes in handy because what we see is that with the census is all the people are accounted for. And not only are they accounted for, they're set in certain camps with certain banners, and that's going to prove very helpful. This command is very helpful when we see in chapter 10 that they start to leave Mount Sinai. And with this census, they're organized, everything's being administered appropriately, and everyone's going out in an orderly fashion. Okay, God bless you guys. Till tomorrow. Remember, if you need the Bible, send me an email at becauseloveneverfails@gmail.com, and I'll send that to you. Take care. Bye.